to the Oxcast. My name is Matt, and that is the last impression I'm going to do of this video. Sorry for that. Couldn't resist. Today I'm going to talk about Sips and Sjin Animated, which is an extremely early video I did. This was back in 2013 when Let's Players really weren't like a huge thing. Like, they were definitely around, and there were definitely some big ones. I know I personally at the time watched the Oxcast and Game Grumps and Achievement Hunter. And I had my little animation channel and I had about 50 subscribers for several months. And I love these Let's Players, and Game Grumps in particular had animations from the beginning. And I assume that's because Aaron is an animator and he just had a bigger animator fan base already. But I was like, well, the Oxcast could really use something like that. So I made one and I posted it, and it didn't do much for several months, or maybe like a month. And then one day I woke up to tons of notifications to find that Sips actually retweeted it and was sent this by somebody. So whoever you are, thank you for getting this in front of Sips. This ultimately led to me, making videos for the Yogscast. And when we agreed to do that, they wanted to buy all my Yogscast videos I had already, because I had like 2 or 3 on my channel at the time. And I said, that sounds awesome. That sounds great. But I just want to keep this one right here. It's the first one I did. It really, it means something to me. It was sentimental in a way. So that's why this is the only Yogscast animated I still have on my channel, aside from the one I did a couple years ago. All the others, they bought all the others. They took them all. They're all on their channel now. Anyway, without further ado, let's dig into this animation. This was 7 years ago as of recording this. Even more than 7 years. Wow. And I've definitely changed my style a lot, improved a lot, so it'll be really interesting to look back and see what I did here. So this is the very first scene where Sjin says he has his shears, and already it's like, oh my god. The drawings are terrible. They're awful. They're miserable. The lines are blech. And in my defense, I was using a very basic drawing tablet. There was no fancy screen or anything, and I don't think I ever really got used to looking at the screen with my eyes and then my hand doing something on the desk that I couldn't directly see. And that lack of being able to see exactly what you're doing is something I dealt with for a while. I did all of my Yogscast animations with that tablet. But yeah, the line work you can see here is very kind of sketchy, very kind of messy. That's partly the tablet, and also partly because Flash is not super intuitive to draw in. So for example, if I have my brush at this size and I'll just draw a line, and then I decide to zoom out and I draw a line without changing my brush size, you see the very stark difference. And if I zoom way in, same brush size, those are all the same size. And that's because when you zoom in and out, the brush will actually change in a way, because it's relative to the viewport itself, not the actual picture. So I think I had a hard time with that. Today, if I were drawing this, my style's changed to where I use a much thinner line usually. Something more like that. And I also use pen pressure, which I did not used to use. So that way I actually have a little bit of variance in my line width. But even then, Flash is just not great at interpreting your brush strokes. Really, the only setting you have in Flash for your brush is this smoothing option right here. And it's on a scale from 0 to 100. And really, you can't deviate too far from the middle, because it'll just totally take your brush off the rails. So just to demonstrate that, 0, you can see how like jagged, well, it's not too bad. Maybe if I up the brush size, you'll see, it's not too bad. It's basically, being a vector program, it's going to create a lot more anchor points. If I zoom in, it's just a little bit jagged. It's actually behaving better than I remember it was. And 100 is just, it's going to try and deform your line completely. You really can't do like minute details very well. Just looks ugly. It is interesting that I put a smear frame right away, so I didn't know what smear frames were at least. Which are basically very short transitional frames from one pose to the next, usually pretty distorted, like you see here. And this pose is actually 2 frames long, which in my animation, which is 24 frames per second, that's 1/12 of a second, not too bad. Most smears today I try to keep to 1 frame, only 1/24 of a second, so this is actually twice as long as I'm used to using now. But it doesn't look bad. Another thing too is, especially with a very snappy transition like this, a lot of times in my animations, I'll add a little bit of a bounce. So I'll take it, and for a little bit, we'll just kind of have him like stretch up in the direction he was moving before snapping back into his final pose. So kind of something like that. But I wasn't doing this at this point. There really isn't going to be a lot to talk about like my other videos. There's no sketching I did beforehand. There was no like planning really. It just, I had it in my head and I just wanted to make it a reality basically. But you see how simple these animations are and how rough the drawings are. The lines are going all over the place. They're not connecting right. Like this line here shouldn't be sticking out like that. That's weird. And the transition from pose to pose is really nothing. It's just standing, pointing, standing, pointing. I think one problem I had early on, because I could draw better than this in real life, is in an animation, you're so overwhelmed. It's intimidating to have such a long project, even though this video is only like maybe a little over a minute. That's still a lot of drawings you have to do to finish this video, and it's intimidating. And so I think I really rushed the drawings and really tried to cut corners wherever I could because I was so focused on the end, just getting it done. So the next scene, we have Sjin licking his shears. And this is an interesting scene because it's a very simple like action. The tongue moves basically up and then down again. But if you see here, these are the frames right here. So I did these on the ones. So each of these boxes, each of these dots essentially are 1/24th of a second. So there's a lot of frames making up this animation, and I would not animate this on the ones today. There's no way. Nowadays, most of my animation is done on the 2s or the 3s, which means it's either going to be a 1/12 of a second per frame, or 24 divided by 3 is probably some number that exists if I was better at math. So yeah, especially such a simple animation with down, up, down, like there's no reason whatsoever to use this many drawings to portray that. And yeah, just like a very barren, like notice the backgrounds are also extremely plain, no detail. I didn't have time. I needed to get this video done. And the door just flies open on one frame. I really, you know, I was just still figuring it out. I was very much figuring it out still. The timing of things, how much effort I can put into each drawing, you know, stuff like that. So now the next scene is a white background, which is insane. I would never do this today. I don't know what I was thinking. You know, people are watching this at, you know, at night in the dark. They don't want to be blinded by a white screen. And this scene is just to show like this formula of sheep plus shears equals a bed, I think. I forget what they talk about exactly. So here's a good example too of kind of the inconsistency of the line. Like these lines are much thinner in the background than the floor and the foreground. And I think I was trying to do that to kind of separate the background. And you can tell back here too, there's no line at all. There's no outline whatsoever. But I don't know, you look at this and it just looks weird. Now when I animate, I have the mindset that if you pause the video at any point on a frame, it should be something that people would want to look at in itself. And like a lot of these drawings are just so ugly and gross. It's like, you know, it doesn't apply. I do really like Sjin's face though. It's a good facial expression. Not sure why his head goes white. I actually never noticed that before. Is that really how it is? What did I do? Hold on. Yeah, somehow I just have, that's actually white. F. I don't know what I did there. I have no idea. I actually just kind of fixed it on accident just by clicking off of it. So yeah, and this little things like that will happen. And then I also, you know, I see that I've, again, a very blank background, but also I have a very like big problem with proportion, I think, back then, because Sip's head kind of flattens for some reason in this scene. When you animate, you know, you have things moving around. It can be difficult to keep things consistent in their volume, but that's extremely important because it's not going to look right. People are going to notice if your objects and shapes are constantly deforming and changing and just kind of nonsensically. You can certainly use that to effect in conveying movement, but something like this where his head is just kind of inexplicably flatter than it was before is not doing that. And again, a smear frame, and again, we talk about preserving volume. Like, where does his head go? I mean, this is the kind of pose where his head should really be, if anything, bigger than it was up here, but it's clearly not, because the head is actually a little bit closer to the camera than it was before. Again, ugly lines, crooked everything. This is just turning into like me roasting my past self, and like, I don't know, it's fine. I do love this video though. Like I said, I didn't even sell it because I was so attached to it, and I think it does have a lot of charm, despite how bad it is. I don't want to give the impression that I think it's garbage or anything. It's just funny to look back on now that, you know, it's something I would never make today, and at least not in the same way. And who knows, maybe that's not for the best. I don't know. This might be the most complicated animation in the whole video, honestly. Sip's climbing into a tractor, and I think I did it okay. It's only a few drawings. He's kind of explaining something and like stopping and pausing a lot, and then climbs in only like three poses. So yeah, it's very choppy, but the whole video is like that. So it doesn't really come across as inconsistent. It's just kind of, it almost becomes the style of the video, and it's almost like it's hard to explain. I don't know. And you know, the audio for the Yogscast, I didn't like edit at all, except for the Yog Bomb. I did like cut that down. That was like a 30-minute episode, I think, and I cut it down to 10 minutes, which by the way, they let me do. They just let me make that call, like edit it down myself. So They were super cool, super hands-off, pretty much whatever I wanted to do, they were totally fine with it. But in cases like this, where Sips is pausing and kind of taking his time to get the words out, you do have to kind of convey that in animation too. So in this scene, you'll see him pause a few times, and in those pauses, I use it to kind of give Sips, you know, his mind is obviously working, he's thinking, and I try to convey that in the animation with this kind of look to the right here. And then this... This pause really works great though. This might be my favorite scene of the whole video, just because his face is really good, and then it's anticipation, and you're like, all right, let's get on with it. And then suddenly he flies through these trees. That is good. That is good. See, I'm not roasting it this time. That was good use of anticipation, which is an element of animation, a principle of animation, whatever you want to call it. So there. Yeah, I knew what I was doing. So I skipped a few scenes ahead. Not a lot to talk about that I haven't already talked about. Edward Scissorhands is obviously a big subject in this episode, so I did have to look up how he looked, make sure I got the outfit somewhat close. And again, with the white background for no reason at all. And I don't know what I was thinking here. This is just a really weird scene. Props to me for trying it, but I don't know if it works. Definitely, like, you know, I definitely had to focus on facial expressions back then, like to kind of convey, because, you know, like in the episode originally, like obviously this scene is funny by itself, that's why I chose to animate it, but in an animation you can really give their words real facial expressions and real like live scenarios and kind of add into the humor. Just the abruptness that things happen in this video is just crazy. I think that's why people liked it. It's just how I don't know, graphic and just abrupt everything is. Things are just falling over and no transitions between poses. The scene is fine, attacked, dead. Just like that. And then he cuts the sheep. And then the foreskin part where he says, "There goes your foreskin." And I remember thinking, like, how am I going to draw this scene? How in the hell am I going to make this safe for YouTube? And it's just like, you know, we'll make a little red splotch and they'll get the point, I think. Probably. I think it's the best way I could have probably done it. Again, with the white background, oh my god. I don't know what I would do today. I don't mind this idea of having like these little doll-like caricatures of the characters kind of ramming into each other, but the background could have been like literally anything else. I think I looked up like a fetish for like sharp objects or something, and this word came up, so I put that on the on the book when Sips is thinking about it. I think that's what that is. And there's little Easter eggs like that I'm really, really fond of. I try to always include cool details like that in my animations, especially now I put a little more effort in. I put a lot of that in like the backgrounds and stuff, where before the backgrounds were always very plain. So here we have Sips describing how it would feel, how it would basically play out if you were to have intercourse with Edward Scissorhands, and that, you know, his claws probably would dig into your back. and again with the facial expressions. Definitely, I think that is really what makes the animation. The facial expressions and the abruptness at everything. Just the absurd speed at which everything plays at. It's extremely crude, it's extremely choppy, but I think it really does work. And this version says something very vulgar. Too much for YouTube. So I basically just censored it too, because I didn't know what to do. But there is a break between the beeps, and so I did like add this horrifying scene, like something crazy is happening. I don't know what he actually says, but for it to be bad enough for them to bleep out on their show, it must have been pretty bad. Especially with Sip's reaction here. What? No. It must have been really, really bad to elicit that kind of reaction. Again, with like the preservation of volume and getting back to animating, when Sips curls up into this ball here, his head kind of like really shrinks for no reason at all. And then it kind of grows back again. It's those kinds of things you really have to like watch out for. Like this frame in particular should be way, like this won't really fix it, but that's more the proportions it should probably be. And like move down a little bit. That already looks a little better, but it's also extremely fast. It's another one of those things where I just probably approach it completely differently from the beginning. And this is one of those things where like the audio, when you're using audio, you don't really have control of. Sometimes things happen that you just have to incorporate in the animation somehow. Here Sips was digging dirt, and you can hear the dirt.
In saying that, Sjin, now.
So I just had him digging dirt. I could have made probably a funny like little something else making that sound, but keeping it literal I think is totally fine. I think it's a good animation. It's kind of funny. And then the final scene, just this, I'm not good at Photoshop. I did this picture in Photoshop though. So yeah, that's basically the end of the animation. So as the title card says, thank you for watching. This was a really fun and interesting trip down memory lane. Definitely, it's not the first animation I've ever done. I do have ones that are earlier than this that are even worse looking. So that might be interesting to look at. So let me know what you guys want to see. I can do more looks at videos like this. We can do tutorials. We can do anything else really about animation and art. I am still working on animations for this channel. I am working on one for this channel, but I just got a commission for a music video. So that will probably take a few months. And then the animation for this channel will also probably take a few months. So, you know, it's just the nature of the beast. Animation is just one of those things that takes a really long time. It's tedious, it's time consuming, but it is so rewarding. And so I'll definitely still upload animations to this channel. I just want to fill out the content a little bit in between. Videos like this is kind of a fun way to do it. So let me know what you want to see, because I'm really, really interested in if people want to see anything at all. I don't even know. So if you like this video, be sure to like it. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that as well so you don't miss my next animation whenever that comes out, next year most likely. And I'll see you guys next time.